Can you guys hear me? Hello, everybody. Can everyone hear me? Is it sound okay? Hello from Belo Horizonte. I can see some close friends there. Can everybody hear me and see me well? Can we just check that? Yes? Cool. Excellent. First of all, I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time to attend this presentation. I hope it's going to be useful. I also would like to thank Disal, especially Lyrica, for setting up this webinar. That's the third time we've worked together. My name is Jorge Sette. I'm the Business Development Manager for Express Publishing. And this is the third time this year we've worked together with Disal on webinars. We had one presentation in March before the pandemic. Then we had another one a month ago done by Tatiana Canto. And now this is my second presentation. We're going to be talking, I'm going to put on my presentation on. Can you guys see the slides? Just a couple of, can you guys see the slides? Yes, great. Just, some announcements before we get started. You guys are going to receive certificates automatically through Disal. Unfortunately, I cannot share the presentation because it belongs to Express Publishing. It's copyright. But you guys can take some notes and you can take some screenshots during the presentation if you want. Okay? We're going to be talking about writing. And my first question to you is, do you guys teach writing in your classrooms? Yeah? Not so much? Yes? Right. What kind of texts do you teach? What is it that your students write in your classrooms? No mucho? We have somebody from Spain or a Spanish-speaking country. What kind of text types? For exams? Yes. Essays? Compositions? Excellent. Do you think writing is an easy skill to teach? No, it is hard, isn't it? It's one of the hardest skills to teach. Is it a productive or a receptive skill, by the way? And what is the difference? What are the productive skills? Writing and speaking, of course. And reading and listening are receptive skills. Writing is productive, okay? According to this guy here that some of you might know, Ernest Hemingway, there is nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. Of course, he's a writer from the beginning of the 20th century. Nowadays, you would say you sit down at your laptop and bleed. Obviously, he was being ironic. He was being sarcastic. But writing is not easy. But the way he sees it is we can make it easier. It's only very, very hard if you wait for inspiration, if you count on the muses to come down from heaven to help you out, if you count on having some kind of epiphany. In this case, writing can be very hard. But if you follow a set of steps, if you follow a structure, a system, it can make your job a lot easier, okay? And that's the plan in this presentation. I'm going to share with you a system, okay? A model, if you wish, okay? A methodology for you guys to follow step by step when you're teaching writing to your students. By the way, before we get started, let's establish the scope of this presentation. what kind of students do I have in mind for this kind of model, for this kind of system that I'm going to pass on to you? I'm thinking about teenagers, young adults, or adults, okay? And also the kinds of levels I have in mind for this kind of model that we'll be discussing here is from elementary through advanced levels, okay? Of course, at the very beginning of the writing stages, you cannot apply that model. You're going to see a why, okay? So the students will have to have some language and the need to communicate through writing for that model to be useful for them, okay? I can't see all the questions at this time, but we'll be going through them later on, okay? The presentation will last some 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and then at the end, we can discuss, okay? So again, going back, the universe is teenagers, young adults, and adults from elementary level, A1 plus, A2, if you follow the Common European Framework of Reference, up to advanced and onwards, right? First of all, let's discuss the differences between written discourse and spoken discourse, okay? These differences nowadays are becoming a lot more, these distinctions, let's say, are becoming a lot more blurred in these days of the internet, but they still hold, okay? It's still useful to see some of the characteristics of the writing model and some characteristics of speaking before we understand how they overlap. Because after 1995, when the internet became very popular in Brazil and in the world, we've been doing a lot more writing since than we did before, okay? Before the 1990s, the average person would do very little writing on a daily basis. But after 1995, we started with emails, then social media, then WhatsApp, then all kinds of internet-related writing. So what's going on now is that we are doing a lot more writing these days than we did before the advent of the internet. All right. And as I said, there are differences, but also these differences are becoming the gap between writing and speaking is becoming a lot narrower nowadays. What are the characteristics of a written discourse? Okay, it's usually more formal. It's the red oval on the left. It's a lot more formal in terms of grammar, in terms of vocabulary. Okay, we base this formality on what we call educated speakers or educated native speakers of the language. Right? It is asynchronous. What does that mean? That the person who writes doesn't have to be in the same environment, in the same context of the physical context as the person who's reading the information. Okay, it can be done at different times at different places. Writing is recorded. Okay, from the very beginning. At first in stone, on the walls of caves, then on parchment, the scrolls, then on paper, then on the laptops, on the computers, and then on the screen of your smartphones. What about spoken discourse? It's usually more informal, okay? It's more colloquial. It is synchronous, or it used to be a lot more. As I said before, the differences are becoming more relevant today, because if you record a message, for example, it's going to be a recorded message and not necessarily synchronous. But if you're talking about a real conversation or an exchange of ideas at work, for example, it's still synchronous. At the same time, the speakers need to be together, okay, and the speaker and the listener, okay, and it's not necessarily recorded anywhere. According to Penny Ur, or Penny Ur, as she says it, who's an author that I like very much. She writes, she has this great book called A Course in Language Teaching. If you take a look at the bottom of the slide, you're gonna see it. All right. These are the main differences between writing and speaking. Writing is more permanent. It stays. Okay. Once you've written something, it can be read the following week, the following day, years from now, centuries from now, okay? It's more explicit. It means that because you and the reader, the writer and the reader, are not sharing the same space, the same context, okay? You need to be careful in terms of the information that you share. For example, if you use a pronoun like he or she, you need to make sure that you are referring to someone you wrote about before. Otherwise, it's not going to make any sense. Whereas if you're talking to that person, you might as well point at someone and say he or she or they, okay? But if you're writing, you have to make that a lot more explicit, okay? The context as well. Okay, the information that you share with the reader has to be more complete, because you are not sure that he knows as much as you do about the experience or whatever you want to express in your writing. Writing is dense, meaning more concise, more compact. When you're speaking, you can go back, you can rephrase, you can repeat words, you can try different words to make yourself understood. Okay, writing, on the other hand, needs to be concise. We use a lot of subordination, we use coordination, but the idea is to make it direct, concise, and simple. Detachment. The writer works in isolation, usually, okay? So usually when you write something, you don't have your reader in front of you, okay? It's a lonely activity, okay? And it has its advantages and disadvantages. Also, writing, now we're going to cover the main points on the right of the slides. It requires a lot more organization, okay? You have to think, you have to draft before you finish your writing piece. Therefore, it's a lot slower than speaking, okay? It takes time to write something. Usually, writing uses standard language, which is the language of educated native speakers, all right? Nowadays, things are changing, but still, that difference still holds. And it's a learned skill. Unlike speaking, which is especially your mother tongue, which is naturally acquired, you need to go to school or to have a coach to teach you how to write. Do you agree? What's being said so far? Okay. Now, let me give an example that breaks these rules. Informal writing, for example. If you're using WhatsApp, we know that the writing on WhatsApp is a lot more informal than the writing we have in a report, for example, or a literary text, right? So I got this, I received that on my WhatsApp or on Facebook, I can't remember. And I thought it was really funny because many of these abbreviations, I wasn't familiar with many of these abbreviations. So you can take a look and see the ones that you use, the ones that you like, the ones that you found new, that are new to you. Okay, for example, I'd never heard of AFK, away from the keyboard, or something like that, when you were doing something else and you want the person you're talking to understand that you can't answer immediately. All right? I'm just going back one step to cover something that I forgot. The overlap between writing and speaking. Okay, both of them have rules, although the rules for writing are a lot more strict. Okay, they consist of symbols. In writing, you have letters, and in speaking, you have phonemes and syllables. Okay, and both have meanings. They represent something else. They are symbols. Therefore, they stand for something which is not there. A noun, an experience, a reality that is not necessarily present in the symbol. All right? I just needed to go back to cover this overlap between written and spoken speech. Also, you are familiar with these images, right? What are they called? Emojis. Nowadays, writing is not only about letters, as I said before. We can use a lot of images to convey expressions and to summarize our writing. Okay? So, pretty common. There are loads of them. You know, some of them are quite funny. Some of them can be a bit offensive sometimes, okay, but still funny. From right to left, from left to right and top to bottom, we've got, for example, what? Love, expressing love. Then, what is the second icon on the first row? You're expressing what? Accordance, yes. Or just a wink, just, yeah, I got it. I got what you said. What about the third? Surprise. Okay. What about the fourth? Sadness, exactly. Let's go to the second row, the first to the left. What does that mean? It means, Domitila, can you help me out here? It means that you are mocking somebody, maybe, okay? The second, in the second row, could be that you're laughing. The third, that you're angry, all right? Oh, the person can be mocking me. Okay, Domitila, thanks. The fourth would be laughing out loud, okay? Then the icon with the emoji with the sunglasses could express relaxation, okay? Then blushing or somebody being shy. Then somebody flirting or complimenting another person, okay? The whistle, and then happiness again. But in these days of coronavirus, COVID-19, even the emojis are getting a lot more sophisticated, meaning that they need writing to help us out understand them. Why? Because they are all wearing masks. Okay? So now to understand the emoji, in these days of coronavirus, you need to read again. You need to use letters, all right? Blush, confused, disappointed, frowning, grinning. Not even through the eyes you can tell what these little guys are feeling, or little girls, right? Yes, what somebody's asking. What about the eyes? You can't tell, okay? Of course, that's only a joke. Okay, I hope I haven't offended anybody. Let's move on. Now, this is serious stuff. This is what the linguist guru, David Crystal, says about the new times, the experiences, the writing experiences we are living these days. It is important to get students and teachers acclimatized to a multimodal world. Not a world where images always replace language, but one in which printed text and images work together to form a communicative act. I would also add voice and sounds to this, okay? So more and more, the way we communicate combines writing, speaking, the use of images, etc., etc., the use of videos. All right, we are moving towards a new kind of communication where we use all these modes together to express ourselves. Right? Yes, I agree with Janaki that Mr. Crystal is amazing. All right, this is from an Express Publishing book, a new book called English for 21st Century Skills, which I strongly recommend. Okay, but what kind of writing do you guys do in the classroom? Or what kind of writing do you teach in the classroom? Okay, we can use writing in the classroom to practice for the practice of language points. In this case, writing would be a means to an end. It wouldn't be writing per se. We are using writing as a tool to practice vocabulary, grammar, spelling, etc. So writing as a way of practicing language points. So this is basically what people at the very beginning levels already do. Of course, we do it throughout our language course, even at the advanced stages, at the more advanced stages. But from the very beginning, we can use some writing to practice vocabulary. Maybe you teach writing in the class because some of your students have very specific needs, all right? For example, some of them are going to study abroad. They're going to go to a college. So they need writing for academic reasons. And that's why you are going to teach some text types to that classroom, all right? Some of them, as some of you have already mentioned, are working towards an examination, Cambridge examination or Michigan or TOEFL or TOEIC or IELTS. And for that, you need writing as well, okay? Or you are thinking of applying for a business job, especially if you're going to work for a multinational company. Writing in English is essential, okay? All your emails to the headquarters of the company, if it's not in Brazil, are probably going to be in English. So English is the lingua franca, is the language of international communication. So if you're going to go into business, you need to be able to write in English, okay? Reports, marketing plans, memos, emails, etc., etc. Note-taking, that's a very, very useful skill, and it takes writing, okay? Note-taking is very useful at an academic setting or in the workplace, okay? I take notes all the time at work. This is something different, the next use of writing in the classroom. Writing involves a different mental process than speaking. So when you are writing, you are organizing your ideas in a more sophisticated way. You can come up with epiphanies, insights that when you're just thinking or speaking, you could not. Okay, some therapists even say that if you write diaries and you write for yourself, you don't even need to go to therapy because it's a very therapeutic process. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why you should teach writing in the classroom. Okay, for self-use, for self-analysis. Also, writing can be a classroom management tool. How? It can change the pace of the lesson. It can change the atmosphere. For example, let's imagine your students have done or are doing a very hard listening comprehension passage followed by a role play that requires a lot of efforts. And then you say, okay, let's take a break now. Let's do a simple writing activity from the workbook or from the interactive whiteboard software or from the learning management platform that you might be using. Because today, we don't use only books. We use a lot of interactive whiteboard. We use platforms, learning platforms. So you can, establish a break to change the atmosphere, okay? Reduce noise. Speaking activities are usually very noisy, okay? Especially if you're teaching teenagers, right? So let's imagine you are teaching a very noisy group and the classroom next door is having a test, all right? So you want your students to be quieter. One way of lowering the level of noise is assigning a writing activity, okay? It also changes the mood, okay? Let's imagine you've just had a game and your student, a speaking game, and your students are very excited, they're kind of restless, so you might as well assign some writing to calm them down a little bit, to bring them down to a more relaxed, let's say, mood, okay? Do you agree with these different uses of writing pieces in the classroom? Okay, we're going to cover all that. We're going to cover brainstorming. Cool. All right, now let's talk about levels of writing. We are moving from the most simple at the top to the most complex at the bottom. Okay? So copy, for example, is something that you do from the very beginning. Even if you are at level A1, beginning level, you can do some copying. Then you move on to using writing as a means to an end, as we discussed before, doing activities, grammar, vocabulary, spelling, all right? Now, these two levels are the ones we are going to focus on today in this presentation. Guided writing and process writing. They're basically the same thing, with one little difference. If you include process writing in your guiding writing methodology, it means that you're going to be stressing, emphasizing drafting. You are not so much interested in the final product, the goal. You are more interested in getting your students to do different rewrites or progressive rewrites, moving towards the goal. All right? And that's exactly what our model recommends, that the students do rewrites before they come up with the final product. Somebody has used a word, that's Maria Inês, that's exactly what we're going to do here, scaffolding, okay? We're going to give you guys, as teachers, a structure, a scaffold that will help you teach writing to your students in a more systematic, in an easier, in a more useful way. Scaffolding is the key word. So thank you, Maria Inês Curi, very much. Unguided writing is what happens at the end of the course. Your students are free to fly, okay? Spread your wings and fly. Now you don't need my support anymore as a teacher. You are on your own, okay? You may need an editor if you're a writer or if you are a journalist, for example. You may need editors to help you out, but you're not going to need the teacher anymore. So let's move on, because that's what we're going to be talking about in our model here. Okay, what have you been writing in the past 2 weeks? Can you remember anything at all that you wrote in the past 2 weeks yourselves? Emails, messages, lesson plans, messages, SMS. What's LPS? I don't understand that, sorry. Emails, right. So what are these things that you have been writing? Emails, messages, lesson plans. What are they called? They are called genres, different genres or different text types. Okay? For example, what kind of text type is this? Yes, exactly. Emails, messages, lesson plans, notes of class. These are all different text types, different genres, right? So this is advertisements, okay, or ads. Somebody has just mentioned. Rosemary, thank you. What text type is this? Literature. To be more specific, classic literature. What about this? A story, possibly printed in a newspaper story, okay, a newspaper article. These are all different text types. These are all different genres. This is a summary of a number of genres we can teach in the classroom, okay? Unless you're teaching, you are working as a private teacher, or you have a very small number of students, uh, you don't know exactly what your students need. Of course, if you run a needs analysis at the beginning of the course, you might as well have a clearer idea of your students' needs. But ideally, and the real situation is that most teachers don't know uh, why the students will need writing in the future. Okay, they're taking an English class, and as part of most English classes, the books and the course books you're using have a writing strand. Okay, and you're going to use it because it's part of the curriculum, right? But my point here is the more genres, the more text types you cover, the better for your students. If you're using an express publishing book, you are okay because in our books we cover different genres, different text types. Okay, if you're using another course book that may not have all these text types, you may add them to the course. There is nothing wrong for a teacher to come up with their own material to add and to make the course book you're using better, right? We're going to focus on examples that come from this course book uh, published by Express Publishing, On Screen. It is a course for young adults or adults, taking students from beginning level all the way up to proficiency in 9 books, okay? So it's very complete, and the methodology I'll be sharing with you is in this book, okay? It's part of the writing strands of On Screen. Basically, this is the model we are going to be using. Oh, by the way, if you're not using On Screen, it doesn't mean that you can apply this methodology. This is a universal methodology. You can use for whatever course book you may be using, okay? If it's not part of your course book, it will help you structure your writing lessons anyway, okay? I don't know if you can see that clearly. Can you see the slide? Okay. In green, we have the essential steps. In orange or red, depending on the color of your computer, I kind of, my opinion is that these steps are optional. Okay, they're not as essential as the green ones, but of course, if you add them, your lesson is going to be a lot more effective. And if we're talking guided writing plus process writing, which is our plan here, remember that drafting becomes an essential step, not an optional step. If you decide to include process writing as part of your methodology, right? So we've got rubric analysis, model analysis, language presentation or language practice, brainstorming, a chart with the useful language, the plan for your writing assignments, a checklist for the editing, for the mistakes, then the drafting of the first write, okay? And then if it's, I put it in the shape of a cycle, because if you're using drafting, you might as well go around the cycle a second or even a third time, depending on how much your teacher is interested in promoting drafting in the classroom. Remember, writing is rewriting, okay? Or the more you rewrite, the better your assignment, your piece of writing, the end result is going to be. All right? You won't see any books or any novels that you like that hasn't been written and rewritten a number of times before it's published. Okay? Writers don't simply sit down and write the novel from the beginning to the end. They write and rewrite and change and add and cut and edit. Okay? So that's part of the writing process. Okay? Yes, somebody's asking about correction of students' writing. We have a section on that later on. So let's move on. Let's cover the first steps of the writing lesson: the rubric analysis, the model analysis, the language presentation and practice, and the brainstorming. So this is an example from on screen. A book review. What is the rubric? The rubric is basically the instructions. What is it that you want your students to write? In this case, an English learner's website is asking for reviews of people's favorite books. Write a review saying what the book is all about and making general comments about the plot, the characters, etc., saying why you recommend the book. This should be done using from 120 to 160 words. So these are the instructions. So the first thing you have to do is get the students to understand what they're going to do. Sometimes the students won't write because they didn't understand what the task was, especially if they're taking an exam. All right, so they start writing, they kind of understood the rubric, but they're not quite sure about what it is being asked of them. So that's why it's important to train them to understand the rubrics. By the way, you can see some purple circles here. That's because that screenshot did not come from the book, but from the interactive whiteboard it comes with, okay? It gives you the answers. If you press on the button on the interactive whiteboard software, you're going to get the answer, right? Okay, so the first thing is underline the keywords. What are the keywords here? Learner's website, review of a book, book, general comments, plot, characters. So these are the keywords, all right? Then we can have some questions, to help the students understand the task. What do you have to write? Who for? You are going to write a book review for a learner's website recommending a book that you read and liked. That's the task. What tenses will you mainly use? So think about it. You're going to write your opinion about a book, what verb tense is going to be prevalent in your assignment, in your writing? Any ideas? Simple present, future, simple past, present perfect? No ideas? Present, yes. Rosemary again, she's being a great help. Okay, so a simple present is the main tense you're going to use. And then, for example, they give you some suggestions for you to tick what is important and what is not important in your written assignment, okay? Or on the piece of writing you are going to, in the piece of writing you are going to produce. We're not going to do that now because it's going to take some time. And it's very open-ended. It's not, I mean, there are no right, absolute right and wrong answers. So this is to make the students think what they should include in their writing. Then what is the next step? We covered rubric analysis, analyzing the rubrics. Now we go to model analysis. So what is that? I show them a book review. If your students know where they're going, it's a lot easier to get there, okay? Some of your students may have never read a book review before, so they have no idea what it looks like. So if you show them an example, this is a book review. That's what you're going to write at the end of this lesson. It makes it a lot more easier for them, okay? By the way, this is intermediate level, okay? It would be B1 plus, CAE level, right? CAE level, yes. Okay, so first of all, after you read the review, you decide if it's a crime story, a mystery, a fantasy, an adventure. You are studying the review. This is a James Bond book. I wrote this presentation before I heard about Sean Connery's death. So it's only a sad coincidence that I'm using a 00707 example. Okay, I had no idea that he was going to die when I prepared this. Right? So this is the first step of the model analysis. Somebody's laughing about Sean Connery's death. Oh my God. You can have more activities related to the analysis of the model. For example, here, I'm asking the students to match the paragraph with the summary. For example, the main points of the plot, that's probably paragraph B. Closing comments and recommendation of the book, that's probably the last paragraph. Comments about the plot and the characters and the characters in more detail, that's probably here. You can see that they're discussing the character here. Background information about the book, the name of the book, the name of the author, the genre, that's probably the first paragraph, okay? So this is all part of what I call model analysis. Then we're going to move on to some language practice. Is that necessary? Usually the writing part is the last part of your lesson. Okay, meaning that all the vocabulary, all the new grammar, all the language points have already been presented. So ideally, this section here would be review or revision, all right? But if not, you are going to present it to your students, okay? So this is the part where you do some language presentation. Going back to the model, this is language presentation or language practice, okay? In this case, the idea is for them to use words. First of all, the question is, are these words more related to a book review or to a movie review. And then they fill in the exercise. Okay? So we are practicing the language they're going to use in the writing. We're not going to do that because it's going to take some time. Finally, brainstorming. Again, a very important step, although optional. What does brainstorming do? Brainstorming is just a way of giving the students different alternatives about what they're going to write about, a way of structuring to give them options about or ideas on what to write about. Here it is in the shape of a spidergram or a mind map kind of thing, okay? But it can be done on the blackboard, just a list of words. It can be done through post-its if you are involving the whole class in the process, okay? The idea is to get as many different ideas together before the students, so the students can pick what they're gonna use. Moving on, I always refer back to the model to help you out. Useful language. After you do all these steps here, it is great if you give them some useful language in the shape of a chart or handout. For example, we know that in this activity, the students are going to write a book review. So how do I express background information? How do I express the main points of the plot? So I give the sections that need to be present in the assignment, but I also give them some cues on the language they might use for the activity. Of course, that's a lot of scaffolding, as somebody points out. As they progress, as they become more advanced students, you are going to give them less and less help, okay? But at the beginning, they need to have this kind of support. After that, you are going to come up with a plan together with the class, okay? You're going to elicit the plan from them, and then you're going to present the plan. Okay, so in your writing, there should be an introduction, then there should be the main body, then there should be a conclusion. If you're writing a book review, in the introduction, you write some background information about the book, okay? Then, for example, the title, the author, the genre, to give the reader a general idea of what the book's all about. In the main body, you're going to write the main points of the plot, and some comments about the storyline, the characters. If it's not a spoiler, you can give some information about the ending, but you don't want to give spoilers, right? So be careful. And then you write down your recommendation and a summary of the reasons why you think that's a good book, all right? Or that's a good suggestion for them to read. After that, what do you think the students will do? Let me go back to the model. We are here. We've reached the plan. Now, they can do some drafting. Let's skip the checklist. They can do some drafting and go back here. Or they can have a very clear idea of what they should be looking for their self-correction before they do the drafting. But after the drafting, they need to get back here and check the checklist. For example, in your book review writing, you need to check for grammar, spelling, punctuation, focus on the tense, use a variety of adjectives, okay? Have you covered all the instructions asked for in the rubric? Are you using the correct number of words? So this can be done as a warning before the first drafting, or right afterwards. Okay, how do you do correction at this point? Okay, somebody asked me about correction. We're going to start dealing with that, but then you're going to have some more information about it. Okay, after this first draft, you can have the students self-correct based on the checklist. Okay, before handing in the activity to the teacher, or you can pair them off. You can have some pair work. The students will exchange their assignments, the written activities, and help each other correct the activity based on the checklist. Okay, ideally the teacher will only get to correction in the second draft or the third draft. Okay, maybe a third draft would be too much. Okay, so if you stick to two, the teacher will be receiving only the second draft. The first draft is about self-correction. Okay, these are some of the points. I'm just listing it in a different way. What does the checklist would contain? Grammar, spelling mistakes, use of capital letters, paragraph, etc., etc. Okay? Punctuation, register, cohesion and coherence. Do you know the difference between cohesion and coherence? Let's have some differences here. Cohesion is what makes the text, what glues the text, all right? So you need to use vocabulary related to the topic, probably from the same semantic fields. You need to be consistent in terms of the verb tense. You need to use pronouns that refer back to nouns that you used before, all right? If you use he, she, they, their, his, you need to make sure that they are related to something you wrote before, not to confuse the readers, okay? Linkers like so, therefore, in other words, perhaps, okay? Nevertheless, not perhaps, sorry, nevertheless, therefore, etc., etc. Coherence, on the other hand, is about the purpose, is about the structure of the text, okay? Does the text have a goal? What is the goal? To write some kind of recommendation. Is the structure the one we came up with in the model? Introduction, the body of the text, the conclusion. Is the sequencing of the paragraphs okay? Do you have the right audience in mind? Who is going to be reading the text? The student needs to know who's going to read it. In that case, learners of a learner's website, students that are studying from a learner's website. Okay? Moving on. Another example very quickly before we do correction, because we are a bit late, okay? Just to give you an idea. The same model. Now we're going to use a text for a lower level. This would be an A2 level, elementary. The rubric analysis is about writing an email. You went on holiday, write an email to your English-speaking friend telling him or her about it. 50 to 100 words in your email. Mention where you stayed, say what you did, describe something you bought. Okay? So here we ask questions about the rubric to help the students out. Okay? What are you going to write? An email. Who is going to read it? An English-speaking friend. What is it about? What are you going to write about your holiday? How many words should you write? 50 to 100 words, right? Then we move on to model analysis. I give them an email, very simple email, and I ask them again to match the paragraph with the content of the email, right? So they know more or less what their writing is going to be like. Providing a model is essential in the early stages of teaching writing, okay? Otherwise, the students will get lost. They will have no idea what the final product should look like, okay? Then we move on to some language activities. Remember, presentation or practice of language. Another presentation of practice of language. You're supposed to list what adjectives are good or positive and what adjectives are negative. For example, wonderful, good; horrible, bad; boring, good; tasty, good, okay, etc., etc. Then more language activities. If you write an email about a holiday, you are very likely to use the simple past or the past simple, not the present, because you're talking about a past experience, right? Then you have some brainstorming. Of course, you can expand the spidergram. You can create new categories, like here, activities, morning and evening, accommodation, hotel, type of room, who you share the room with, okay? You can expand the brainstorming as much as you want. Yes, I will go back to the abbreviations later on, okay? Not right now because we need to finish this. Then I present them a chart with useful language. If you're going to write an email about your holiday, you need to start with opening remarks and the reason for writing, using some of these expressions or these words. You're gonna talk about the weather using some of these expressions. You're gonna talk about accommodation, activities, and then the closing remarks. Okay, usually when you finish an email to a friend, you say, I need to go now, that's all for now, I'll write you later, can you please tell me about your experiences in during the holiday, so on and so forth. So then the checklist, that will help the students self-correct the first drafting. Is that clear so far? Is the model clear? What level is it? That's A2 level. The exercise we just finished about email is elementary level thing. Okay, that's very clear, right? So very quickly, let's cover some correction. How do you give feedback when your students hand you the writing piece? Okay. Look, there are no absolutes about correction. Okay. If you have a system that you use and that works for you, stick to it. Fine. All right. I'm going to give you some guidelines, some suggestions, but there are no absolutes. Okay. These are things for you to plan your correction. For example, I would say use green or blue pen rather than red ink, because red ink frightens the student, puts them off. If they get back their homework and it's all red and there is red all over it, you know, they will feel put off, right? They will feel disappointed. But if you have mature students, you might as well use a red pen, all right? No problem. So that depends on your experience, all right? I want you to add your experience of correction to these guidelines. Marking criteria. You don't have to correct absolutely everything in the text. You need to make choices. For example, I'm going to correct only the language points that we've been studying for the past 3 months. That's the beginning, the middle of the semester. I'm not going to correct anything else. Or I'm going to correct content rather than form, whatever, okay? But you have to have a criteria. I strongly advise you not to try and correct every single mistake. Make sure the correction is on the margin, in the margin of the paper, so the students can read their text, okay? You can only underline some errors, all right, and get the students to self-correct, or you can write a letter in reply if you're focusing on content. For example, remember that activity when the students wrote about the holiday? Their experiences during the last holiday. So you might as well reply to them. Really? So that was great. I'm glad you enjoyed your holiday. All right. Obviously, if you have a huge group, it's impossible for a teacher to write a letter to everybody in class. But you can select. You can select. Today, I'm going to write a letter to student A, B, and C. Next time, I'm going to write a letter to students D, E, and F. All right. So you don't have to write the letter to everybody. I'm just emphasizing that content is as important as grammar and vocabulary and spelling. You may have seen that you come up with some symbols to indicate the kinds of mistakes that the students made. All right, so you negotiate, you explain the symbols to the student, and then you use it. For example, let's go through this very quickly. Harry Greenman, that's the story of an alien that wants to learn somebody's language, right? So the spaceship landed, a door opened. Harry the Greenman stumbled and fell out of the spaceship. He mumbled something. Obviously, this should be in the past. Mumbled. So there is a verb problem here, indicated by the little v. Yes, somebody's saying, what about asking the students to correct each other's writings? That's a possibility. But that should be done during one of the drafts, not as the final product. Here, he mumbled something that anybody could understand, but then a bit louder. That's the wrong word. It's not anybody, it's nobody. He mumbled something that nobody could understand, but then a bit louder. Then is written with an E, not with an A. So here you have a spelling problem, right? My name is Captain Greenman, and I want to study your language. I want to study. So I use this Greek letter here. It looks like a Greek letter, lambda, but you might as well use MW, meaning missing word, because there is a missing word here, okay? Let's see what the problem is here. Frank, a tall man, gave it, I don't understand this very well. They arranged some lessons. Next morning, Frank taught, spelling mistake, T-A-U-G-H-T, right? But the lesson was very bored. A lesson cannot be bored. A lesson is boring. So wrong words, okay? Followed by another verb problem. The Captain Greenman fell asleep, not felt. He fell asleep, okay? And here, Frank was very angry and threw the green man back in the spaceship. Suddenly came another creature out. That's the problem with the order. You should have said, suddenly another creature came out of the spaceship. All right? So if you use these codes, your correction is going to be a lot more effective. Okay? These are just ideas. You can come up with your own codes and share them with your students. The important thing is that the students will understand your codes. All right? Basically, that's it. Do you have any questions? I know you wrote lots of questions before, but I won't be able to go back. So if you have questions now, okay, this is the moment. Somebody's happy with the presentation. I'm happy you are happy. Thank you. No questions? Oh my God, I was looking forward to the questions. Thank you very much too. All right, let's just, please that friend of ours that wanted to see the abbreviations again. So here they are. Somebody has to go because he has an appointment. Okay, now I'm gonna share my details with you, and Lyrica from Disal will send that slide to you at the end. Okay, these are my details. My name, this is my personal blog. It's not only about ELT, right? I write a lot of book reviews, movie reviews, TV series, So if you want to check out my personal blog, you are more than welcome. You may like it. If you like art, if you like television, if you like TV series, Netflix. Where to buy our materials? Somebody asked. Disal is one of the stores that you can use to buy our books. And if you want to get information on our materials, you might contact our importer, our official importer, Books and Toys. So here you've got their email, info@expresspublishing.com.br. Yeah, well, somebody's talking about motivation, right? We are assuming in this case, Luciana, that the students are motivated to do the writing lesson because they have reasons to do so. Obviously, if you're teaching a large group of students, not everybody is going to be equally motivated to do writing, okay? Because writing is hard, okay? But if it's part of the curriculum and if they enrolled on your lesson, they know they'll have to do it, okay? But then again, it's worth investigating if somebody or a group of people have very specific needs. Are they preparing for an examination? Are they going to college abroad? Are they applying for a job, okay, in business? So in this case, you may prioritize the kind of writings you're going, the text types you are going to write or to have them write, okay? Especially if you're not using a course book. If you're using a course book, you'll cover a number of text types. And if you're using an express publishing course book, you can be sure that lots and lots of different text types are going to be taught at every level of the course. Somebody wants to see the book cover again. So this is an example. The examples were taken from this particular book, but all the other books from Express Publishing follow the same methodology. And I repeat, you don't have to be using this book to apply the methodology. As long as you have teenagers, young adults, adult students at the elementary to advanced level, you can use the model, okay? And the model is very flexible, all right? Remember that you can skip some steps, like the language presentation, the language practice, the brainstorming, okay? Although I recommend you do that if you want to prepare your students for a good, effective writing practice. Okay? Any more questions? I'm gonna leave my information here again. Okay, let me go back Okay, that's wonderful. I thank you very much. I hope the presentation was somehow useful and that you can apply the model to your writing lessons, or at least try it. Okay, I'm sure that you're going to get good results as long as you follow the cycle. Okay, you use the steps in a very flexible way, especially the correction. Correction is something very personal, so you might as well forget everything that I said and use your own methodology for the correction. And yes, students can correct each other's work, but I would do that in the first or the second draft, not the final product. The final product must be seen and corrected by the teacher, so the student feels more confident. Okay. Thank you. Oh, somebody from Alagoas. Lucky you, Rosangela. I think it's time to say goodbye. Remember, you're going to be getting the certificate from Disal. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you some other time. Okay? Bye-bye.